Hey everybody, Ryan here at eTrailer. Today on our 2020 Chevrolet Equinox, we're going to be taking a look at and showing you how to install the CURT Class 3 Trailer Hitch Receiver. So right away, probably the main thing that kind of separates this hitch apart from some of the others is that it's going to be a little less visible. Really the only thing you're going to be able to see is the receiver tube opening. But at the same time, it's really going to depend on how you're looking at it. If you're looking at your car directly from the back, this is the only thing you're going to be able to see. But if you're looking at it from the side, this one does have a lot longer of a receiver tube, so that's going to be a little more noticeable compared to the ones that are more visible, that hang down, that have a shorter receiver tube. Many of our Equinox customers use their SUVs to do a little bit of everything. This is going to be a good all-around hitch. Not only will we be able to do some towing, but we're also going to be able to use our favorite accessory too. This hitch is a Class 3, so it's going to have that 2" by 2" receiver tube opening and a reinforced collar for extra strength. It's going to have the 5/8 pinhole. Now keep in mind, a pin and clip does not come included, but if you need one, you can find it here at eTrailer. It's going to have loop-style safety chain openings, which aren't huge, but they are easy to get to. So you shouldn't have any issues using whatever size hook that you might have. The hitch is going to give us some pretty good weight capacities. As far as the maximum gross tongue weight rating goes, it's going to be 675 pounds. So that's going to be the amount of weight pushing down on the hitch. Now that's a pretty high number, so you shouldn't have any issues using just about whatever size bike rack or cargo carrier that you want to. As far as the maximum gross trailer weight rating goes, it's going to be 4,500 pounds. So that's going to be the amount of weight pulling on the hitch. So that's the weight of your trailer plus anything that you might have on it. Now this hitch can be used with the weight distribution system, which is a separate component, but even if you are using that weight distribution system, the weight capacities do remain the same. And I do always like to recommend to check with your Equinox's owner's manual to make sure you can pull that much weight. Now I'm going to give you a couple of measurements, and you're going to use these to help figure out which hitch mounted accessories to get. From the ground to the top inside edge of the receiver tube opening, it's going to be about 9.5 inches. So chances are pretty good you're going to need to get a ball mount with a rise. From the center of the hitch pin hole to the edge of the rear bumper, that's going to be about 7 inches. And you're going to use that measurement to help figure out that if any folding accessories you might have can be stored in the upright position without contacting the bumper. So overall, a good looking hitch that's made right here in the USA, and it's going to be able to get the job done for you, whether you're towing or using it for accessories. And the good news is too, it's really not that hard to get installed. Everything's pretty straightforward and shouldn't take you a whole lot of time. Speaking of which, let's go ahead and put it on together now. To begin our install, we're going to be working underneath the back of our Equinox. We're going to first start over here on the passenger side. So if we look, we're going to have a wire harness that runs along our frame rail. And so what we're going to do is detach it. So we'll take a trim panel tool or a flathead screwdriver and work underneath the head of that fastener and pop it down. That way it'll give us a little more room whenever we go to put our hitch up. What we need to do now is this larger hole on each side of our frame rail. We're going to need to enlarge it just a little bit, just big enough that we can fit all of our hardware up inside of the frame rail. So what I'm going to use is a die grinder tool. However, you don't have to take all that much material out, so even a hand file would work too. But once I have this side done, I'm going to repeat the same process over on the other side. So now once we have the hole enlarged, it's not a bad idea to take some spray paint. Just put a coating over that bare metal to help prevent any rust. So while we let our paint dry, we can start to lower our exhaust. To give us room, we're going to have two 7mm fasteners right here along the bottom edge of our bumper. So go ahead and grab our socket and pull those out. Now what we can do is remove the hanger that's holding our exhaust up in place. So what we're going to do is, here's the two bolts that's holding it up. The heads of the bolts are on this side, and that's kind of why we loosened up our bumper so we can pull it down and get room. But what we're going to do is take a 15 millimeter and get both those removed. The good news is that they're not super tight, so they are relatively easy to break free and get them pulled out. And once we have both of these completely removed, the other side is set up the exact same way, so we're just going to repeat that process over there. Now we're going to have one more rubber isolator hanger to remove right here, but before we do that, to help support the exhaust, that way it doesn't drop completely down, I'm going to take a strap. Just find a good spot on each side of our vehicle to hook it to. And this will kind of support that exhaust while we get it lowered. So I got that strap in place. The way you're going to get this hanger off is I like to spray it down with some lubricant or some soapy water. Then we can take a pry bar, work one of the rubber ends off of the metal hanger, just like that. Once we have it down, you can loosen up the strap, just kind of drop your exhaust a little bit. Now we can get our hardware up inside of the frame rail. We're going to have 3 attachment points on each side. They're all going to be the same and use the same hardware. The attachment points will be this one, and this hole. So to get our hardware in there, I'm going to take the coiled end of our fish wire, and I'm going to start at this very, very back one here. Feed that in, and what we're trying to do is get that coiled end to drop out through this hole that we enlarged. If it doesn't fall right out, you might have to kind of reach up there and help pull it through. Now that we have it out, we're going to take a spacer block, slide that over the coiled end, as well as a carriage bolt. That carriage bolt's going to thread right onto the pull wire. We're going to feed the hardware up inside the frame rail, one piece at a time. Pull on the other end, and get our bolt to drop out just like that. So I'm going to use that same technique to get our other 2 bolts in. I like to start with this one, move to this one, and then do this one last. Just makes it a little easier to get all the hardware in. That way we're not fighting it. Sometimes too, what I like to do to make it a little easier is if you take the fish wire or pull wire, you can kind of judge, kind of put a bend in it. Sometimes it makes it easier to drop out through the hole. Once we get this final one in place, we'll go over to the other side and do the same thing. Now with an extra set of hands, we can lift our hitch into position. So you're going to kind of want to slide it over our exhaust. You may have to kind of pull it down a little bit. But once we get it above it, what we're going to do is take each pull wire and run them through the corresponding holes in the hitch. And once we get them all poked through on each side, we can raise it up into position. Get our hardware to drop down through the openings. Then we're going to remove at least one of the pull wires on each side. We're going to take the flange nut and get it started hand tight. That way the hitch will support itself while we work on getting the rest of the flange nut started. One thing I want to point out too, if you try to go to thread the nut on your bolts and it wants to push back up into the frame rail, what what you can do is take your fingertip or even a flathead screwdriver and kind of put some side pressure on it to hold it steady. That makes it a lot easier to get that nut started. Now that we have all of our hardware in place, we can go ahead and snug everything down. Now we'll go ahead and grab a torque wrench and tighten everything down to the amount specified in our instructions. Since our hitch is all torqued down now, we can go ahead and raise our exhaust back into position. So we'll line it up. And we're just going to use those original bolts that we took out earlier. I find it a little easier to get all of them kind of started hand tight. And the exhaust will kind of be supporting itself and in the correct position. And once we have them hand tight, we can come back and snug them down again. We're able to come back to this rubber hanger, push that back into position, and now that the exhaust is fully supported, we can remove our strap. And don't forget to re-secure the bottom of your bumper with the two 7mm screws. And that'll finish up our look at and our installation of the CURT Class 3 Trailer Hitch Receiver on our 2020 Chevrolet Equinox.